Yeah, there needed to be a lot of affordable housing built in a country that primarily is focused on private property rights, which is kind of like, I guess, the American thing. In New York, of course, obviously is an exception, right? And they start to consult what kind of housing should be developed. Now, they didn't manage to build a lot of housing, but part of their conclusion after a lot of consulting and talking to people, it came to a very interesting conclusion. They didn't want the state or the city to build housing, right? So in short, the majority manifested against the idea of going back to a welfare state in which, the build of housing was the responsibility of the state. And I guess most of this has to do with, with the memories we all have of that period of standardization and mass development of housing, right? And I think it's much more deep than that, but that was the general sort of consensus. The other one was, we definitely don't want housing built by private developers. Any statistic you put out, it tells you how bad neoliberal idea of like having private companies think about development this has rendered disasters, right? Whether environmental or social disasters. Now, at the moment, of course, we have Hochul talking with, private developers, with Vornado and all of these people, whatever. And the people that are being consulted are either these developers or the consultants of the developers that led us into these, massive disaster housing crisis that not only New York, but the world in general is facing. And so that would be the McKinseys and all of these criminals, right, that are there in these agencies. Now, but the people in Barcelona very clearly at some point said, we don't want this, like no more developers, please. Okay, so if we don't want the backing of the welfare state or the idea of like going back into that kind of housing, if we don't want private developers to take care of housing, then what is left, right? So in contemporary capitalist sort of dynamics, you could say that the first wave of the 20th century was public power over decisions of anything else. That would be the welfare kind of like state-driven. Then the neoliberal model came, which is, everything from the private prioritizes over anything else. And there is absolutely, a third paradigm that we should be searching. And this is what, at the end with working with Ada Colau and the people in Barcelona, this is where they were claiming, is that the third paradigm we should be fighting for is letting people build their own housing, right? I mean, the collective production. And that, of course, entitles some much more concrete decisions because, this is not a theoretical exercise that the Barcelona people were doing. They were like, okay, so how do we do that, right? If it's not developers, if it's not the government, if it's more people, how do we do that? And her administration, a lot of my friends that I work with on a daily basis were involved in this. And they came with, a very clear agenda that one of the directions was to shift power dynamics or give more power to people. Now, how do we achieve that in a city where concentrates the largest numbers of millionaires in the world is number one, the largest numbers of billionaires in the world is number one. Nevertheless, we must not forget that more than 80% of the population that we live here in the city struggle to live in the city. No matter how, like your salary range is, obviously there's that. And so there is a lot of desire for people's power. My take is that a lot of the policy that has been pushed for, specifically because of this nostalgia towards a welfare state, has avoided us to think on could we build policy to leave, more power to, let's say, the community developer, not the nonprofit developer, but like the community developer, whether it's a land trust or not, because we can discuss a lot whether land trust might be the model or not. So in Barcelona, they did, of course, it's a much smaller city. They did build, and their preferential model was cooperatives. Right? And they built, each cooperative had their own governance model. They built around 60,000 units, which is not really a lot for what they needed. Either we're pushing for more government involvement or more private involvement, right? But I don't think we're pushing enough for the more community space.